Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. John Douillard, and welcome to LifeSpa.com, where we prove ancient medical wisdom with modern science. And I was recently reading a study about the use of light boxes, which are very, very bright lights that people would use in the wintertime to support a better mood, a more stable mood, and less depression. And it's pretty effective, in fact, that when people get more light, they actually feel significantly better. Well, that sort of, supports this whole idea that we have, most of us, many of us have a circadian light-dark cycle imbalance. We should all have an ample amount of light during the day and an ample amount of darkness at night. And these cycles change dramatically from winter to summer to spring. Obviously, in the winter, we get way more darkness. And therefore, if you sort of didn't get enough light in the summer, you're probably going to feel depleted in light in the winter when the days are short and the nights are long. So for billions of years, every cell on the planet, every creature, bug, food, nut, seed, grain, and human being have a hormone in it called melatonin. And melatonin is our connection to the light-dark cycles. And we have melatonin to produce at the nighttime, and we have vitamin D produced from the daytime. The sun, if we have midday sun, we get what's called UVB radiation that comes from the sun. And that UVB radiation activates vitamin D on the oil on our skin. And it sets up pre-vitamin D on our skin. It absorbs through our skin into our blood to go to our liver, where it becomes this chemical called calcidiol, which is a subactive form of vitamin D. And then it goes to our kidneys, where it becomes what's called calcitriol, which is the active form of vitamin D. And there's some interesting things. And then from there, the whole body gets vitamin D. If it gets enough vitamin D, like around 25 nanograms per milliliter or so, you won't get rickets. And we all have heard for years that if vitamin D deficiencies are linked to a bone softening disease called rickets. But what they have recently found is that when they went to the equator, they found that people at the equator who get light all the time, and they get direct sunlight from the sun, which is how and only when you get UVB radiation. In the winter, the UVB radiation, the sun is too low in the sky, and the UVB rays get broken up in the atmosphere. And the only thing we get in the wintertime or in the summertime in the morning or the evening is the UVA rays, and they're the ones that cause the skin cancers and the sunburns and all of that. Not to go crazy, but unfortunately the sunscreens for all these years, the SPF factor is literally a measurement of how well the sunscreen blocks, not the UVA rays that make skin cancer or give you a sunburn, but they actually are measuring how well they block the UVB rays, which make the vitamin D, which in fact protect you from from skin cancers and sunburns and things like that. But when you get the vitamin D from the sun and it goes from your skin to your liver to your kidneys and it becomes active, guess who is the last tissue on the list to get the active vitamin D? It's your skin. Which is sad because our skin really needs vitamin D to protect it. And when they went to the equator, they found people's vitamin D levels were 60, 70, 80 nanograms per milliliter. Up north in the northern hemisphere, worse in Canada, were 10, 20, and 30. The normal range for vitamin D is 30 to 100. The reality is that if you're between 30 and around 45, you're not going to get rickets. But when it goes over 45, 50, 60, 70, and 80, still within the normal range, the vitamin D becomes active. It starts to become a hormone. It starts to function more like in fact, it is a corticosteroid hormone, one of the most powerful hormones in the body, linked to immune health, to blood pressure health, cardiovascular health, mood health. It's the sun that delivers the mood support that ideally would linger even through the winter, although we'll talk more about that in a minute. So vitamin D at the higher levels, 45 to 80 nanograms per milliliter, is where you want to be. And in the winter, since there's basically not enough sun to give you any of that, unless you're south of Atlanta, you can get some of those UVB rays. You're probably going to be like 87% of the American population, and worse in Canada, who are vitamin D deficient. Very difficult to get them over the 45 or 50 mark. When the vitamin D becomes, instead of a vitamin for rickets, it becomes a hormone for just about everything else under the sun. And when they did that study down in the equator, that's what created all the hoopla about vitamin D. And everybody's like, oh my gosh, vitamin D is so important. The vitamin D in your milk, in the fortified vitamin D, is what's called vitamin D2. It's a synthetic form of vitamin D. It's called ergocalciferol, and it is not able to amp up enough vitamin D in you to get you over the 45 marks. You'll never get adequate optimal levels of vitamin D from synthetic vitamin D, something that was man-made, never used in humans before. You won't get rickets, but you won't get the magic vitamin that you get from the sun. Problem is, in the wintertime, ancient humans would eat the brains of a woolly mammoth and the livers and all the fatty parts, and that's where the vitamin D was stored, so they would get their vitamin D that way. Today, many forms of vitamin D come from cod liver oil, which is from the fish, who of course have to die, which is one thing and definitely offends many people, and won't take fish oils for that reason. But also, I find that the cod liver oil versions of vitamin D are very heavy and very hard to digest, and they don't optimize very, very well to get you to the 45 to 80 nanograms per milliliter. The vitamin D that we use is called Liquid Sun. It's made from sheep lanolin. Sheep lanolin, very much like us, the sheep have oil on their skin. The sun hits the oil on their fur, converts to pre-vitamin D on their skin. They lick each other, and they get vitamin D by licking themselves. We do a sort of a similar thing. We don't lick each other or lick ourselves, although it might work. But that we do absorb the vitamin D through our skin. So that sheep lanolin vitamin D is way easier to digest. I tested the fish versions for years and have never really seen the effect of getting people amped up to optimize your vitamin D levels like I have with the sheep lanolin version that we use. So that's something that's important. So when would you want to take your vitamin D? In the morning, when the sun comes up. When would you want to take your melatonin, if you're going to take melatonin? When the sun goes down. The problem is, in the wintertime, as we are in now, the sun goes down at 5 o'clock at night. We're up till 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, some people even later. So that's 5-6 hours of darkness when the body, in an ancestral way, evolutionarily speaking, the body would be making vitamin D from 5 o'clock, or melatonin from 5 o'clock all the way till 6 o'clock the next morning. Many more hours of melatonin. And what melatonin does is it doesn't just put you to sleep. It puts you to sleep so it can do its job, like the janitor, the night watchman comes and cleans floors, washes windows. The night watchman makes sure no bad bugs who are opportunistic at nighttime when the temperature decreases and the bugs start to take over and take advantage of the window of nighttime where the bugs can proliferate in a negative way and take you out. Melatonin puts up that guard and says, not on my watch, you're not going there, and they protect us. We make a ridiculous amount of melatonin when we're young, which is why teenagers can sleep for weeks on end, right? But we don't make so much melatonin as we get older, and we screw up our melatonin by having alterations of our circadian clock, watching TV at night, looking at our blue light screens on our phones and tablets before we go to bed, which literally blocks the production of melatonin at night. So we have studies now that show that people's melatonin levels are all over the place. They're surging in the middle of the day, they're delayed at night. Most people have some type of circadian imbalance. So what I tell my folks to do to help get their mood on straight for the winter is to make sure you get plenty of ample sun in the summer and plenty of darkness in the winter, which means blocking out LED screens and little indicator lights on your computers and all that stuff. Block them all out and turn the lights off. Even use an eye mask if you can't get the residual light from the city lights out of your room. That's very, very important. From a seasonal perspective, the more light you get in the summer and the more darkness you get in the winter, the more circadian rhythmically imbalanced you are. The more melatonin you produce in the winter is based on how much light you get in the summer. But what's really interesting is the same thing happens during the daytime. The more sunlight you get during the daytime produces more melatonin at night. Now, when you measure intensity of light with a thing called lux, L-U-X. In this room that I'm sitting in here right now, where I'm getting about 300 or 400 lux of intensity of light. If I walked outside, it's a very sunny day outside, I'd get 3,000 lux. The difference between me being indoors all day with 300 lux, and it's pretty light in here, light enough for us to be seemingly functional and comfortable. But when I walk outside and go into direct sunlight, I'm getting 3,000 lux, 100 times more intensity of light. That shuts down my melatonin production during the day, and it amps it up during the night. So it's all about the rhythms. It's all about the cycles, and it's so beautiful. So what I do is I take my vitamin D during the day. Actually, what I do, we actually put vitamin D in all of our skincare products because that's where like I said, your skin is the last tissue to get vitamin D, and vitamin D supports antioxidant function of your skin, moisturization, collagen production, elasticity of your skin. Very, very important to have good, healthy skin, right? You all want to have nice looking skin. But on the inside, when you take vitamin D internally, you're also getting the vitamin D for your intestinal skin, which is very, very important. But you should also know that vitamin D on your skin, it does absorb through your skin, gets into your blood, and feeds you in a similar way. So they both have value. You always want to get your vitamin D levels checked on a regular basis to make sure you know how much you're taking. Gives you in the range of 45 to 80 nanograms per milliliter. You'll need a lot more in the winter. 4 or 5 drops of the liquid sun, which is 4,000 to 5,000 a day in the winter. Maybe don't take any in the summer, or 1 drop here and there throughout the summertime. Usually the sun, if you're active and being outside, is plenty in the summer, but you want to make sure that you test it and make sure you're hitting the magic mark, because not too much and not too little is the name of the game, right? Now, melatonin at nighttime is a different animal. There are foods with melatonin. If you go to lifespa.com and search circadian medicine, I've got about 30 or 40 articles on how to reset your circadian clock naturally with foods, with lifestyle, with diet. There are certain foods that have melatonin in them, like pineapple and oranges and tart cherries and goji berries and all kinds of really cool things you can eat more of to get your melatonin levels amped up. I talk about how you can do a 3-month melatonin circadian reset by taking, we have a melatonin product called Liquid Melatonin, which is unique because if you go to the health food store and buy melatonin, you're looking at doses of 5, 10, 15, 20 milligrams of melatonin, enough to put a horse to sleep. And if you take too much melatonin, it wakes you up. So it's not good to take too much. Now, on the level of melatonin safety, I would never be talking to you about melatonin if it wasn't safe. I am against using hormones unless we absolutely have to. But melatonin is not actually a hormone. The definition of the hormone, one of the major definitions of a hormone, is that if you take a hormone, it will suppress the production of your own. And melatonin, according to many studies, show that if you take melatonin, it does not suppress the production of your own production of melatonin. If you are wild and up late and sunscreens and phones and traveling and jet lagging or night shift working, you need a melatonin reset. So take a very small amount of melatonin. 1 drop of my melatonin or liquid melatonin is 0.1 milligram. 10 drops is 1 milligram, 30 drops is 3 milligrams. In the health stores, you have 10, 20, and 30 milligrams. I personally take 1 to 3 drops, 0.1 to 0.3 milligrams of melatonin per night. And the value of that is that as you get older, I'm 61 years old, your pineal gland will start to produce less melatonin as you age. And like I said, melatonin, when you're young, is fighting all these battles, keeping you young and youthful, keeping you active, balances all of your hormones because it keeps you sexually active and alive so you can reproduce. But once you stop reproducing, like me, nature has a very graceful way of saying, that's it for you. We're going to slowly end you. And one of the ways nature takes us out and gets rid of us is by slowing down the production of melatonin. Well, we can hack that by taking a very small dose of melatonin a day, 1.1 to 0.3 drop or milligrams of melatonin, very, very small amount. And in the numerous articles that I write about melatonin, I teach how to find the right dose for you. And the key is that when you take a melatonin dose, you'd have a great night's sleep. You should wake up feeling refreshed, energetic, vital, not lethargic and not groggy and not tired during the day. If you take too much, you can have that grogginess spill over. So there's a ton of information to know about melatonin, but the bottom line point is we need a lot less than we think. There's that tendency that, God, one drop can't do anything. I need to take more. And our nature wants us to take more, and I've surely done that. And there is no LD50 for melatonin, which means a lethal dose that kills 50% of the people on the planet. Water, for example, I think 17 liters of water will kill half the people. That's the LD50 for water. Everything has an LD50. Water has no LD50 at all. There's no LD50 for for melatonin, which is really, amazing. And there's 30 to 40 years of amazing science behind what melatonin can do. You've got to read some of the articles. I did a podcast with a melatonin researcher who talks about all of a researcher on how melatonin supports bone density, osteoporosis, cardiovascular health, or bone health, blood sugar support and stability. Because it's a high center regulator of all the hormones in the body, it keeps everybody happy. It detoxifies, rebuilds, rejuvenates. It's a very, very important hormone, even though it's not officially a hormone because it doesn't suppress your own production, but it is something to be thinking about doing either as a 3-month melatonin reset, or if you're old, think about a very, very small dose long-term to give you that little bit of melatonin to keep you young, healthy, and happy so you don't break down or age in an accelerated fashion and make the second half of your life, really healthy, which is when, you want to feel great when you're older, not running to the doctor all the time. So in terms of mood, for sure, the more melatonin you produce, ample studies showing that it supports healthy mood. So it's vitamin D during the morning and the day, and a little bit of melatonin. Now you can do it with food or lifestyle, or you can do it a small dose of melatonin supplementation. They all work. Tons of information for you to get at my website at lifespa.com. Type in lifespa.com, search the circadian medicine category. We have about 30, 40 articles there, and get educated how to protect yourself during this changing of seasons and reset your circadian clock, which was, by the way, the Nobel-winning science this year was science done by 3 American scientists who won the Nobel Prize for circadian medicine. So it's not just ancient wisdom anymore, it's Nobel Prize winning modern science. Thanks for listening. I'm Dr. John Douillard.